Hello, if you're new here, I am Coco. If you're not new here, I am still Coco. Today I realized that it has been at least a month since I posted a reading vlog with you guys. And while I have my reasons for stepping back a little bit from reading vlogs as like my main thing on my channel, a couple of the reasons being burnout, the worst reading slump that I've had in a very, very long time, and wanting to expand my channel into more than just books, including like thrifting, fiber arts, that type of thing. I miss talking to you guys about books, especially books that I'm currently reading or books that I've read recently. So I decided we're going to sit down. I'm going to have something to do with my hands, which is working on crocheting a wrap shrug, which I'll show you the inspo for it. It is not the same pattern because I have big boobs and I need to adjust it, but this is the person that I got the idea from. I'll put it in the description as well. But we're going to be working on some crochet because I need something to do with my hands. And we're also going to talk about some books that I read recently. So I'm not going to talk about every single book that I've read. I have done vlogs for some of them, and I do have a Storygraph that I link in every bookish video that you can go and check and see what I've been up to, what I've been reading. But I do want to talk about some of them, mostly ones that I haven't talked about yet. Or I might rant about ones that I have already ranted about. And let's go ahead and get started. I want to chat with you about books. And I think we're going to start in like May or so. So the first book that we're going to talk about, I'm not going to go incredibly in-depth into because it has been talked to death by everyone, and that is Yesteryear. Yesteryear is by Claire Burke, and it is about a trad wife and about how her life really isn't what it seems, which I feel like we all know that that's kind of usually the case with social media trad wives. But something strange happens when, in the midst of her perfect little curated life, she ends up back in like 1877 or something like that and has to actually live as a trad wife. I found this fascinating. At the beginning didn't feel like it was very thrillery, which it was kind of labeled as a thriller. I didn't see that. I could see it more as it goes on, but I thought that this was incredible. I think it was really well done, especially some of the choices that the author made. The fact that this is her debut is crazy because it seems like she has a lot of insight into how to write a book really well that I feel like most of the time probably only comes with experience. And I just think she did really well with it, especially she didn't give, like, obviously our main character was religious, but she didn't give her a specific religion because she didn't want, from what I've heard and from what I can surmise, she probably didn't want people to point the finger at that religion specifically. She wanted the right-wing grift to be seen as a widespread thing where other religious groups can't be like, see, it's only this one, like only the Mormons do this versus only the evangelicals do this, and then everyone sits in their own little bubble. I think that it's a really good way to make people analyze things, though I don't think anybody picking this up is going to be part of any group like that unless they are already deconstructing. But overall, I really, really enjoyed it. I think it was worth the hype, and I can't wait to see what Claire Burke does next. And I really hope she doesn't end up in the sophomore slump, because I feel like if I was a published writer, which I hope to be someday, then that would happen to me, because I would get in my head about things and be like, well, this needs to be a hit. I'm really curious to follow her career and see how things go as Claire Burke continues. I hope she is continuing to write other books and this isn't her only one. Also, just a side note, I'm sorry if you can't always see what I'm crocheting. Sometimes I drop it down a little bit, but I will show you the progress I made at the end. And it's been a while since I've crocheted something at all, so my speed is not up to what it used to be, and this is also cotton yarn. So I'm not making excuses for myself, but I'm not usually this clumsy with crochet. So I'll just leave it at that. Let's talk about the next book. Okay, so the next one, I'm excited to talk about this too, and that is Cherry Baby by Rainbow Rowell. I honestly don't think I've ever read anything by Rainbow Rowell. When I was in the age group for her young adult stuff, that's not what I went for. I didn't go for contemporary stuff. I was very much a fantasy girly, sci-fi girly, mostly fantasy. Fantasy series, long-ass fantasy series was my thing. So Rainbow Rowell with her contemporary, usually teen romance, was not an author that I gravitated towards. But this is the first book that I think I've honestly read from her, and it's an adult novel. Not like that, just a novel for adults. This one is about a woman named Cherry. I think her full name is Cherish. She has a husband named Tom. He started a web comic a while back, and it gained in popularity exponentially. So much so that he was in talks and ended up getting a movie deal out of it. The issue is that this webcomic, it's a fictionalized version of our main character's life. So like Cherry and her husband Tom, it's about their life and just like the little things. And the way that her husband drew her is very recognizable. So she gets seen in grocery stores. People call her Baby, which is like the name that ended up being her character's name in the webcomic. And she's really frustrated because it's not her that's making the movie. She's not the one that's getting all the recognition and everything. She's just, her life is completely turned upside down. And she also kind of felt like it was a violation. So that's what caused her and her husband to now be on the rocks. And so she ends up deciding go to a show after her and her husband are separated. They have decided they're going to get divorced. He's living in Los Angeles, I think, for the movie, and everything in her life has changed. Because she grew up plus size, which I completely understand. I've been plus size for most of my life. I was always a chubby kid. I lost weight a couple different times, and I'm working on getting healthy just to make myself feel better now. Like, I'm not dissing being plus size. I do my best to love myself the way I am, but the experience that Rainbow Rowell brings, like, Cherry's experiences feel so real in this, especially because when she goes to the show, she ends up running into a guy that she went to high school with that she had a huge crush on, but she never thought that he would give her the time of day because she's always been plus size and he was like popular and handsome and the star quarterback or something like that. I don't know if I'm making that part up, but it wasn't going to work out in high school. But he now is interested in her and he runs into her at the show. So she decides she wants to see where it goes with him because who knows, maybe he did like her back then, or maybe things would have been different if she let herself believe that he liked her. And it kind of goes from there. I do want to say, like, this book is not as straightforward as you think it is in a good way. And I really, really enjoyed it. I think especially if you are bigger, if you went through high school plus size and a bigger body, or have something else about you that makes you very insecure and which society deems as not conventionally attractive, you'll probably get a lot out of this book, and I'm so glad I read it. It is something that I will probably reread at some point. Even just the artwork on this, I know that has nothing to do with anything else, nothing to do with the story. Cover art of this book, everything just gorgeous. I tried reading Slow Dance, and I kind of softy enough'd it. That's another book by Rainbow Rowell. It's another like second chance adults romance book. I'll probably come back to it, but I don't think I'm going to connect with the characters in that one as much as I connected with Cherry in this. And just the way that Cherry talks about how she's gone through life, plus size, like, she loves herself, she loves her body, she loves who she is, and her husband had never made her feel like she was unworthy up until the whole thing with the webcomic. So it's just a really interesting story. It's nuanced, it's funny, almost feels like someone picked the whole story out of my brain, because she has this family and they're Catholic, which I grew up Catholic, and there are other people in her family that are also plus size. It's like they come from, like I say, I come from peasant stock. I'm Italian, and we hold on to weight, and we're known to be curvy. So some of the things that she dealt with as a character who grew up Catholic but is not currently Catholic, but has family that is still Catholic, and is part of a family of like a bunch of curvy women. It felt certain things just felt like, wow, did you pick that out of my life? Ignore my face and hair in this. I am editing right now, but Cherry is also a graphic designer. I forgot to mention that, and I honestly forgot about that when I was talking about it. Yeah, her job in this book is design, and I'm a design student. I'm a visual communication design student, which is graphic design expanded. So weird how similar we are in certain ways. It's so weird in a good way. I love this book. Certain other things, like, I don't understand. Like, my husband and I are happily married, and it's just I can't talk about how much I love this book. It's just so good. I kind of wish I would have vlogged it, but I'm also kind of glad it was just like an experience that I had for myself. I don't love a ton of contemporary romance. especially second chance romance. But this is, like I said, more nuanced and different than you think it is. The next book that I read is Molka by Monica Kim, and I was very, very excited about this because this is a horror book, which is by the author of The Eyes Are the Best Part, which was one of my favorite horror books when I read it. It still is one of my favorite horror books. So I was really excited for her next book, and it did not disappoint. I was a little bit worried that it was going to be very similar, like kind of rinse and repeat to The Eyes Are the Best Part. It was very different. We have a character that I hated being in his head, but he was like this creepy dude, and they call this Molka in Eastern Asian countries, especially this one I think is set in Korea. This guy who works at this company that our main character also works at, he is being creepy and has these hidden cameras, which is what Molka is. It's like, I don't know if it's like a little camera. It's voyeuristic, secretly installed cameras, and it's actually a huge problem in real life. So Daye finds herself in a relationship with this really rich guy. Something comes about that violates her, and so it has to do with her life, how she is reeling from the violation, and the way this violation made the rich guy kind of leave her in the dust. Junyoung is the creepy guy who is into spy cameras. So you can kind of guess where this is going. Spy cameras, she's with this guy, suddenly something happens and he no longer wants to be with her. So it's about her, and basically she wants revenge on Junyoung and how he ruined her life and ruined her prospects. It's another good for her book, but I think it's a good for her book in the way that's not derivative. Even of Monica Kim's prior good for her book, she is not derivative of her own other book. I wouldn't say I loved it more than The Eyes Are the Best Part, but it was very good, and I think you should read it. You should absolutely read it, and I will likely reread it again because I feel like it's one of those books that I probably missed some things that are little details that I'll know now that I know what's going to happen in it. The same week, I think, I also read Japanese Gothic by Kylie Lee Baker, which is one of my other favorite horror authors. She wrote Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang, which I really, really enjoyed. Japanese Gothic is about, it's like a dual timeline story of a female samurai Sen in 1877 and our other main character, Lee, who Lee thinks he might have his college roommate, so he runs in 2025. He runs away to his dad and his dad's new wife's house in Japan. His dad's kind of a weird guy. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Lee is half Chinese. I'm not 100% sure, but his dad is really into Asian women, and his dad is white, I believe. So he goes and he lives in this old house that, lo and behold, was Sen's house in 1877. And Lee and Sen learn that there is some sort of connection between them, between all of these years, though each person thinks the other one is a ghost or they're lying. They can't figure out why they are connected, why they can communicate with each other. And it is a true horror book. I do want to say that. There are some gory parts of this. It is very, very good. And I think that, again, it's another author that did not have a sophomore slump in their second big hitter book. I know Kylie Lee Baker has done other books, but mostly YA. And I do want to check those out, though I really, really, unless it's a book that has been really vetted or suggested by people that have similar reading taste to me, I don't really do YA much anymore. I will probably check hers out because her two adult horror books that I've read have been very good. I'm only going to mention Walking Practice by Dolki Min because I wasn't huge into it, and I just kind of want to get that over with. It was going to be part of my LGBTQ fiction. I'm meaning to read it for a while. It's about like an alien that eats people but can shapeshift, doesn't understand why people are so ridiculous about gender on our world, and I'm not going to go too far into it. This book didn't do it for me as much as I thought it was going to. There were some gross parts that I literally cannot get out of my head and never will, and I wish I could scrub it from my brain. And it's not even like parts where the monster ate people. I do appreciate what it says about gender and the fluidity of gender and how people are treated differently depending on the gender, how it's weird how we put so much on perceived gender and people thinking they can always tell, that type of thing, and like transphobic things. I appreciate that, so I didn't give it like a 1. It wasn't one of the worst books I've ever read, but it wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be, and it didn't say as much about gender or things like that as I thought. It just kind of felt kind of surface level and just gross in certain parts just to be disgusting, and I didn't like that. That was Walking Practice by Dolky Min. Also, let me remind you, these are not every single book I read. Go to my Storygraph, check out everything I read. I don't do written reviews for everything. I have been more lately because I haven't been doing reading vlogs. So some of the stuff, like especially the more recent stuff, has some of my actual written down thoughts, so it's not like a complete huge review. So just to reiterate, briefly, I'm going to once again just talk about how much I hated A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. I don't suggest anyone read it. I would suggest Wild or some other book if you are looking for like a nature, finding yourself type nonfiction memoir. Don't read this one. It wasn't good. He is a misogynist piece of crap. He is also classist and not a good person. And he didn't even finish the Appalachian Trail. So not my favorite person in the world. On a better note, a book that should have been in the vlog where I read A Walk in the Woods is Every Step She Takes by Alison Cochrun. This is a sapphic romance book. It's about Sadie, who is 35 and works in her family's antique shop, just is kind of getting by and has not ever had luck finding a person that she wants to spend the rest of her life with. Every man that she goes on a date with, she just feels nothing for, or just really doesn't want him to kiss her, really doesn't want to do anything. She's thought before that maybe she's asexual, but then realizes that she thinks she might actually be gay. But she's still wrestling with that and won't let herself think that when her sister, who is a travel influencer, breaks her toe or her foot and can't end up going on this pilgrimage trail, which isn't necessarily religious. So her sister is supposed to go on Portugal's Camino de Santiago, which I think goes through several different countries in Europe and like that area. I think it might go through Spain, goes through France, and people end up going on this trail either to do a religious pilgrimage or they will do it just to kind of find themselves. Her sister was supposed to go on one as part of like a brand trip, and she can't go. So on a whim, Sadie decides that she's going to go. I don't think she had ever been on a plane. She has always worked at her parents' antique shop, and she has never done anything spontaneous like this. So she decides, screw it, I'm going to do it. But there is turbulence on the plane. So when she's seated next to Mal, who is this very hot woman with a beautiful accent, she kind of blurts out when she thinks they're literally about to die because they're in really bad turbulence, that she believes she's a lesbian. And then lo and behold, she thinks she's never going to see Mal again. She just admitted this to some random stranger. She is a part of their group for the Camino. So it's basically about Sadie and Mal both kind of finding themselves. Mal's dad just died and she's not taking it very well. He did not react very well when Mal came out as gay, and it's layered because her family is Portuguese. I don't know if they're Catholic or Christian or not, but she had not talked to her dad in years when he died. So she kind of needs to find herself on this trail as well. And Sadie thinks that she's a lesbian, and she's wrestling with that because they're both in their 30s. And Sadie feels like it's way too late for her to figure that out, which I have not come out as a lesbian in my 30s, but I am going back to school in my 30s, and I sometimes feel like I did it too late. I know that's not an actual thing, but I really feel for Sadie trying to still figure things out in her 30s. And I guess it's kind of just her trying to realize that there is no perfect time for anything. And also she might be in love with this woman who is going to help her be a baby lesbian and figure out all these experiences that she missed, that she should have had in her 20s and her teens if she knew she was gay back then. So it's just a really beautiful story. It is the through hike story that I wish was a nonfiction true story. Like, it is a better through hike story being a fiction book that is a sapphic romance than Bill Bryson's nonfiction memoir was whatsoever. And I just really liked it. I really loved it. I Everything I've read by Alison Cochrun I've loved. I'm not huge into male-male romance. It's just not my thing. Like, I think it's great to have it, especially I don't love male-male romance written by a woman, but she does have The Charm Offensive, which is the most popular one. Kiss Her Once for Me, which is one of my favorite sapphic romance books, and that is like a Christmassy romance. And then Here We Go Again is a road trip romance, and I've at least very much enjoyed all three of the books that I've read by her. I hope Alison Cochrun comes out with something else very soon, because I'm very picky when it comes to romance, and she does it well. I love the fact that her main characters aren't, cookie cutter, and in this one, I can't remember the ages of the other people in the other books that she wrote, but the women in this are in their 30s. Our main character, I believe, is pretty curvy. She's like, they're not cookie cutter, and the characters in this aren't cookie cutter. There's a lot of different types of people in this book. There's a lot of representation on the LGBTQ spectrum, and it really feels like she's just writing organically how people would be. It doesn't feel like anyone's a tokenization, and I just really loved the story. It was as much about figuring things out for yourself as it was for the romance, and I think that if you like sapphic books and you like sapphic romances but are tired of copy-paste, then you should read this. I would talk about Once There Were Wolves, which I actually read before Every Step She Takes, but I did do a whole reading blog about that, and you can go watch that. It was a very good book. Let's see, what else can I talk about? I talked about The Spirit Bears Its Teeth. I talked about Her Body and Other Parties, which Her Body and Other Parties, you can watch that vlog to get the full info on it, but that one was just okay. I read T. Kingfisher's books, which I did a vlog on. Oh, okay. Wild by Cheryl Strayed is the next one that I don't think I've talked in depth about at all. And that is a nonfiction memoir that everyone and their brother has read or watched the movie on. It's about a woman whose life is falling apart. Her marriage is falling apart. She has had some mental health issues and some substance issues. This is her real true life. She ended up deciding on a whim to hike the PCT, as her marriage is falling apart. And it's her story. It's her life. There are parts of it where I'm like, damn girl, you made some really bad decisions, and I can't support that. I'm doing my best to understand where you come from, but I do think that this was a really raw and poignant look at life and how things can get off the rails. I would never, ever, ever excuse some of the things that she did, which I'm not going to get into because I feel like, is it on the back? No, it's not. So I'm not going to tell you about this thing. You'll know what I'm talking about when you read it, if you read it. But she made some poor decisions, and that partially led to her life kind of blowing up. Her mom died, which is nothing to do with her decisions. So along with her marriage imploding, her mom died, and she's kind of dealing with the grief of that. And it's about her figuring things out, which I think is kind of funny because Every Step She Takes is a fiction book about that. And this one is nonfiction, and I do think if you're going to read a through hike nonfiction memoir, read Wild over A Walk in the Woods, because even if you don't like some of the things that Cheryl Strayed has done in her life, this book is 10 times better and has more depth and more heart than that book ever will. Talking about books without heart, I'm really annoyed at this one. The Caretaker by Marcus Kliewer. I read that, and this derailed me so much that it actually made me not do a Summerween vlog. It, I think, kind of kicked off my issues with a reading slump. It was such a quick read that I did end up finishing it, but I'm wondering now if maybe I should have DNF'd it. But I wanted to be able to rate it, which I don't rate stuff that I DNF. I wanted to rate it on Storygraph because I didn't like it, and I wanted other people to know why I didn't like it, and I wanted to be able to put that on Storygraph. So I did end up finishing it. Marcus Kliewer, he wrote We Used to Live Here, which I ended up mostly liking, though the ending kind of pissed me off, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to give him one more chance. And if this is the same trope or a similar trope, then it's just going to make me annoyed and I'll probably never read from him again. And it was a similar trope, and I'm never going to read from him again. To not give anything away, this is about a woman who is taking care of her younger sister, and she's desperate and needs to have a job. She lost her last one recently, and she has been having trouble finding a job, and something on Craigslist pops up about needing a caretaker. So she applies for the job and gets an interview, and it's very, very different than she expected it to be, but she needs the money, so she takes the job. Basically, she ends up in a bad situation. I'm not going to go in depth into it in case you do want to read this, though I would advise against it, because to me this is several bad plot devices in a trench coat, and I am pissed that instead of actually trying to better his writing or think of something new, I feel like Marcus Kliewer has this penchant to rely on bad, hacky plot devices. And like I said, I won't go into it. You'll understand it if you read it. It was just not good. It was not good. I was annoyed by the end of it. The ending left me annoyed, and not in a way of like, oh, I need to know what happens next. It's like, really? Really? Again? Like, you did something like this again? I was not a fan. I didn't like it. I don't think it was good. I think that We Used to Live Here was shaky in its foundations of the ending. Like, I liked it. I almost gave that a 5-star rating up until the ending of We Used to Live Here. And this one just, like, annoyed me most of the way through. Hold on. I need to untangle my yarn because this is a mess. Okay, we've got 3 books left that I want to talk about. They are actually the 3 most recent books that I've read. And the next one is a rave, and that is Fabulous Bodies by Chuck Tingle. This book was insane. So our main character in this is an influencer by day and a grave robber by night. And she gets a job that could have her set for life, basically. But something happens when she has to go pick up this very famous man, think like David Bowie, queer icon that everyone knows of, who has recently very publicly died. She is given a job to go pick him up, but as she is trying to transport him, he ends up waking up. To me, it feels like Weekend at Bernie's / Beetlejuice. This book is so wild and so insane. I shouldn't be surprised at this point because Chuck Tingle is just, like, his horror books just take it to the next level. I've read every single one that hasn't been about bugs, specifically because I can't do the bugs. But every single horror book that I've read by Chuck Tingle, I have just absolutely loved, and they are all so different from one another. Lucky Day is one of my favorite horror books of all time. I've talked about that in other videos, so I won't go into it, but this was a wild ride and not what you think. It's funny because I'm going to give a tiny little spoiler that both of the characters, the main characters in this book, are not likable people. I do feel like this is a really good vehicle for examining influencer life and famous people and how we treat those types of people and that type of thing. It goes so much deeper, and there is so much horror in this book, but I would just beg you, if you love weird, campy, strange horror, to read Fabulous Bodies by Chuck Tingle. His books are short, they're pretty short, but I do think for like the fast-paced aspect of his books, it works, and it's really, really incredible, and I'm so glad that I read it. Then I went basically 2 whole weeks without being able to pick up a book and read it all the way through. I DNF'd several books until I picked up The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green, which is a nonfiction book, and basically it's essays and snippets of different things within the Anthropocene that he is literally reviewing, like giving 3 stars, 4 stars, whatever. And the Anthropocene is basically the era that we are in, the epoch that we are in, which basically, colloquially by scientists and other people, is known as the Anthropocene because humans have made such an impact on the earth in this short amount of time, and it's going to be forever changed. It kind of goes off of that. I enjoyed this book for the most part. It wasn't one of my favorite books in the world, just because, while some essays really hit it out of the park, I'm not huge on essays, which I don't know why picking this up I didn't think about the fact that it was a bunch of essays. I usually like a through line in my books, but essays kind of stop the process, and that doesn't work very well for my brain. I want like a continuous, not even like a narrative, it is nonfiction, but just like the author's voice starts and stops a little bit, and it kind of takes me out most of the time if there's not a through line. But some of the stuff he talked about with capitalism and disease and certain things really hit home for me, especially like He talks about living in the Midwest in one of his essays and how people can't believe that people like it, which I would love to move out of Ohio eventually, and that's the plan, hopefully in the future. But I can appreciate good things about my area, and he does talk about that a little bit. With him living in Indiana, he talks about that a little bit. I think he's in Indianapolis. So I did love some of the essays, but there were certain ones about sports that my eyes glazed over. He also does mention COVID, which for a book being written in COVID times, I understand. And it's not that much for a book being written in that time period. Like, obviously we're still in COVID times. It's just endemic now instead of a pandemic. But it was just a little bit too much for me. Kind of threw me back into that pandemic mindset. And I'm just like, I don't want to hear about it. I've only ever had one book really be successful where I liked it despite it having to do with the pandemic. And that is actually Bat Eater and Other Names for Corzang by Kylie Lee Baker. So that kind of annoyed me. Like I said, I want to get away from star ratings a little bit, but I did give this 4 instead of a 5 just for those things, though I did like a lot of what he had to say about other things, including Diet Dr. Pepper, because I love Diet Dr. Pepper, though I've been a Canada Dry Fruit Splash Zero girly for a long time now. So that's that. Anthropocene reviewed. A lot of people love it. I thought it was pretty good. There were essays that I could have gone without. The most recent book that I read, which is going to be the last one I talk about, and is kind of very much a heavier book to talk about, is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. That is the book that I read the most recently. I did not know what to expect going into this. I just knew it was about a little black girl who just wished so desperately that she had blue eyes. She thought that everything in her life would be better if she had blue eyes, and it has a lot to do with Eurocentric beauty standards and racism and classism and class stratification. It's a difficult read. I'm just going to say that. Toni Morrison does a really great job, and this is my first book by her, of putting you in the head of people that you honestly don't want to be in the head of, and that she forces you to kind of be uncomfortable and look at the societal reasonings behind things, or like personal reasonings why people end up doing horrible things or being horrible people, and that it is a cycle, and that, you know, we're all part of a system, and this system has symptoms of being a complete and total failure. I'm probably going to be sitting with this for a while. I actually finished it yesterday, and I'm just now starting to go through it a little bit in my head and parse out some of the things that happened in it, to think about why they were there and think critically about them. And it's going to be something that sticks in my head for a while. I read it within 3 hours, but it is something that I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. And not to end on a sad or challenging note, but that is the last book that I'm planning on talking about today. We're going to finish this row while I tell you a little bit more about things going on in my life, just to end it off with. Matt and I got kayaks recently, and we are starting Kayaks and Cryptids channel, which I will also link down below if you're interested in it. It's going to be kind of our travel, cryptid hunting, kayaking, hiking channel, and it's going to be featuring both of us starting out until he gets a little bit more comfortable. It's going to be me kind of spearheading it, but I'm really excited about that. The school year is starting up, and I had been planning on doing a combined bachelor's and master's to get my Master of Library Science. That has changed, especially because I was a major in UX design, and I don't like how much generative and other AI is being pushed in the tech sector, and I really just don't want to be a part of that. And I also fell in love with visual communication design when I took some classes in that last year or last semester, and my professors basically were like, you should pursue this, you have an eye for design, etc. And I really fell in love with it. So I am going for visual communication design, which will extend my time in school a little bit, and I'll probably end up going for a master's in something graphic design, visual communication design, something related to that. Might even be marketing. I don't know. I don't love selling people things, but to have a job where I can do art, that might have to be a part of it. I'm not going to be a salesman whatsoever, but I feel so much more joy and love for designing and art, and especially like fiber arts and physical arts. And I want to ride out this AI bubble, which it isn't even actually AI, it's LLMs, which the misrepresentation of it as actual intelligence. There are things that do machine learn. This is just a sycophant spitting things back at you, and I don't want to be a part of that. So I will not be in UX design. And I also realized library science makes sense for me because I am such a bookworm and I love literacy and accessibility, but I don't have to work in a public library or be a librarian to work within my community. And I think that my skills and my passions are more with visual communication, graphic design, other types of art, and I don't think I'd be able to use that as much as a librarian. And honestly, librarians are public servants and they are constantly treated like crap and have to fight for the smallest little bit of help, and I would rather help them from the outside and do things in my community from the outside than be a part of that from the inside. So I will no longer be going for my Master of Library and Information Science, though eventually I will be getting a master's. I just don't know what in yet. Let me finish this row. I've been talking too much and not actually crocheting. I feel like I've been crocheting for so long and I should have more done. But like I said, I'm slower than I used to be. This yarn is really sticky and I talk with my hands, which means that I move the yarn around a lot and I don't actually crochet the whole time. All right, we're on the last stitch in just a second. And there you have it, folks. We've done like 4 rows total on this project. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little chat. It was mostly just me yapping and crocheting, and I hope that I don't have like a triple chin the entire time, but if I do, then I do. So it's gonna take me forever to edit this. So I'm gonna get going. I hope you enjoyed this. I will have more fiber arts videos. I'll have more thrifting videos. I will have some bookish videos as well. I might end up doing a reading vlog sometime soon, but I can't make any specific promises on when that will be or what it will be about. I am going with the flow and just trying to crawl out of this reading slump. I think I'm getting there, but I really don't want to push myself too hard, and that feels like a lot of pressure to do a reading vlog right now. So thanks so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you like my content. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!